So, my cousin called me last month. And look, I love this guy. He's smart, he works hard, he's been saving up for a car for almost 2 years. 2 years of skipping things, being disciplined, doing everything right. And he calls me, excited, genuinely excited, and he goes, I found the perfect car. Clean, low mileage, great price. I'm putting the deposit down tomorrow. I said, nice, send me the listing. He sends it, I pull up the Carfax, and right there, line 3, previous use, rental vehicle. I called him back. I said, hey, did you notice this? He went quiet for a second, and then he said, and this is the part that stuck with me. He said, oh, yeah, I don't know, man. My friend said rental cars are just beat up. Maybe I should keep looking. He walked away from the deal, spent 3 more weeks searching, eventually bought a privately owned car for $3,200 more. Same year, same mileage, same trim level. Literally the same car, just with a different box checked on the history report. And I sat there thinking, we need to talk about this, because that $3,200 wasn't based on a mechanic's inspection. It wasn't based on research. It wasn't based on a single piece of actual data. It was based on a vibe, a feeling, something a friend said once that sounded like it probably made sense. And the used car market is absolutely full of these moments, where a piece of inherited wisdom that nobody ever actually verified quietly reaches into your wallet and takes a few $1,000s, and you don't even feel it happen. My name is Rehan, and I spend way too much time thinking about the financial beliefs we inherit without ever questioning them, and what those beliefs are actually costing us. If you're someone who has ever made a money decision based on what felt right rather than what the numbers actually said, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this ends up helping you out. Because today, we're going to find out whether the rental car stigma is genuinely protecting you or just making someone else's overpriced inventory a little easier to sell. Alright, so let's actually talk about where this stigma comes from, because it is old, it is deeply ingrained, and once you understand why people believe it, you'll immediately see why the belief doesn't really hold up anymore. The rental car stigma basically goes like this. Rental cars get driven hard by strangers who have no emotional attachment to the vehicle. No one's going to baby a Chevy Malibu they're paying $45 a day for in Dallas. They're going to accelerate fast, brake late, throw their luggage in the trunk without a second thought, and maybe, if we're being real, take that speed bump at a speed that was not recommended by the engineers at General Motors. And look, I get it. That's not crazy reasoning. That is a genuinely logical concern, and for a certain era of the rental car industry, it probably reflected reality pretty well. But here's what most people don't realize. The rental car industry has fundamentally changed, and the assumptions built into the stigma are now decades out of date. Let me give you some context that I think will shift your perspective completely. Let's start with maintenance, because this is where I think the rental car narrative falls apart most dramatically. When you buy a used car from a private seller, and I love private sellers, truly, because sometimes you get an incredible deal. But when you buy from a private seller, what do you actually know about the maintenance history? You've got maybe a Carfax report that captures some of it, you've got whatever the seller tells you, and they are motivated to tell you the best possible version of the story. You might have a stack of receipts, if you're lucky, that's it. Now think about what happens with a rental car fleet. Enterprise, Hertz, Avis, Budget, these are massive corporations with fleets that sometimes run into the hundreds of thousands of vehicles. Their entire business model depends on those cars running. If a car goes down in their fleet, it's not just an inconvenience, it is a direct revenue loss. A car sitting in the repair bay is a car that isn't being rented. So what do? They follow manufacturer maintenance schedules religiously. Oil changes on time, tire rotations on time. The moment a warning light comes on, that car gets pulled from the fleet and serviced, because leaving a customer stranded at an airport in Phoenix at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night is not great for the Yelp reviews. Now, here's a statistic that I want you to sit with. According to data from automotive research firms, the average private vehicle owner delays or skips roughly 20 to 30% of recommended maintenance events over the life of a vehicle. People miss oil changes. They ignore the tire rotation reminder. They drive on brake pads that needed replacing 8,000 miles ago because life is busy and the car seems fine. Rental cars, by contrast, get maintained under what's essentially an institutional protocol. The maintenance doesn't depend on any one person remembering to do it. It's systematized. So right away, we have a situation where the thing you're afraid of, the car being abused, might actually be less damaging than what happens to a typical privately owned vehicle, because the trade-off is that rental cars get maintained on a schedule that most private owners don't actually follow. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about the driving, the hard acceleration, the rough treatment? This is where it gets really interesting. And this is where I want to do some actual math with you, because the numbers tell a story that I think will genuinely surprise you. The average rental car in most major fleet programs gets cycled out of the fleet between 12 and 24 months after it was put in service. Some programs move cars even faster, at 12 months or even less. When these cars get sold off, they typically have somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 miles on them. Let's use 30,000 miles as our working number, because that's pretty representative of a lot of what you'll see on the used market from former rentals. Now, here's the thing about that mileage number. 30,000 miles on a modern car is almost nothing. Cars today are engineered to last 200,000 miles with proper care. We're talking about a vehicle that hasn't even hit 20% of its expected useful life. The engine hasn't even fully broken in yet in the grand scheme of things, but here's where I want to challenge the assumption about how those miles were accumulated. Yes, rental cars get driven by people who aren't attached to them, but those people are also mostly driving them in completely mundane conditions. Airport to hotel, hotel to convention center, grocery run because you forgot your toothbrush and the hotel gift shop wants $14 for a 2-pack. The most damaging driving you can do to a car is not highway miles by indifferent renters. The most damaging driving is short cold start trips, stop-and-go city traffic, a car that sits in a driveway for 3 weeks and then does a 5-minute grocery run. That is brutal on an engine, on a transmission, on every fluid in the drivetrain. Rental cars, by contrast, tend to accumulate a lot of highway miles, trips from airports to destinations, road trips, longer journeys. Those are actually some of the easiest miles you can put on a drivetrain. The engine runs hot and clean. The oil gets circulated properly. Everything is operating within its designed parameters. I'm not saying every rental car is driven like a Sunday afternoon cruise. I'm saying the assumption that rental miles equal bad miles is an oversimplification that does not hold up to scrutiny. Okay, so now let's get to the part that actually affects your bank account, because this is ultimately a financial channel and we're going to talk about money. Former rental cars, when they hit the used market, typically trade at a discount compared to equivalent privately owned vehicles. The stigma is doing something real in the marketplace. It's depressing the price. And the beautiful, ironic, slightly infuriating part is the thing that's making the price go down is not a real deficiency. It's a perception. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's take a 2022 Toyota Camry SE, which is a car that absolutely dominates rental fleets. Bland? Sure. Dependable? Completely. Let's say a comparable privately owned example with 32,000 miles, same year, same trim, clean title, is retailing for around $22,500. That's a pretty typical number you'd see in today's market. A comparable former rental with similar mileage, same year, same trim, also clean title, might come in at $19,000 to $20,500, depending on where you're buying and which rental company is selling it. That's a $2,000 to $3,500 discount on a car that functionally is almost certainly in better shape mechanically than the average privately owned equivalent, because it's been maintained on schedule and is still well within its useful life. Now let's extend that math a little, because I want to show you what this actually means over time. Let's say you finance both cars. You put $3,000 down on each. At today's rates, let's use 7.5% for a 60-month loan, which is pretty realistic for many buyers in the current environment. Here's what you're looking at. On the $22,500 car after a $3,000 down payment, you're financing $19,500. At 7.5% over 60 months, your monthly payment is about $390. Total interest paid over the loan, approximately $3,900. On the $19,500 car, let's say you found the rental at $19,500, nice round number. After $3,000 down, you're financing $16,500. Same rate, same term, your monthly payment is about $330. Total interest paid, approximately $3,300. The difference in monthly payment is $60. That doesn't sound massive, but over 5 years, the total difference in what you spend, combining the lower purchase price and the lower interest, is approximately $4,200. $4,200 for a car that, again, was almost certainly maintained better than average. And that's just the purchase. We haven't even talked about what you can do with that $4,200. If you invest it, and I know, this is where people roll their eyes and say, but what if the stock market crashes? But if you put $4,200 into an index fund and let it sit for 20 years at a conservative 8% annual return, you're looking at roughly $19,500. You turned the car discount into a retirement contribution that compounds into nearly another full car's worth of value. This is the compounding math that nobody teaches you in the dealership. Now, I want to stop here and address the objections, because I know exactly what some of you are thinking, and I want to be fair to the counterargument. Objection number one: but Rihan, rental cars have been beat up by hundreds of different drivers. You don't know what those people did. Fair, legitimate. And here's my response. You don't know what any used car went through regardless of who owned it. You're always buying uncertainty in the used car market. The question is whether that uncertainty is priced correctly. With a rental car, the price already reflects the stigma. You're being compensated for the perceived risk. With a privately owned vehicle, you're sometimes paying a premium and still getting a car that was poorly maintained by someone who just kept better receipts. The solution, and this applies to any used car purchase, is a pre-purchase inspection by an independent mechanic. Not a dealership mechanic, not the seller's mechanic, an independent shop. You pay them $100 to $150 and they put the car on a lift and tell you exactly what's going on. That inspection is the single best $150 you can spend at any used car transaction. If a rental car passes that inspection, the history matters a lot less. Objection number two: Enterprise or Hertz or whoever is going to sell me the car at a dealership level price anyway, not at a discount. So what's the point? This is actually a more nuanced objection, and I respect it. The rental car companies have gotten smarter about retail pricing on their direct sales platforms. Companies like Enterprise Car Sales have genuine storefronts now, and sometimes price their inventory competitively with the broader market, which can eat into the discount I'm describing. But here's the thing. That doesn't eliminate the opportunity. Former rental cars also flow through auctions, and then through independent dealers and even private sellers who bought them at auction and are reselling. The stigma follows the car. As long as a Carfax report shows a rental history, the general market will discount it, even if the reality doesn't justify that discount. Your job as a buyer is to find those cars, understand why the discount exists, and make an evidence-based decision about whether the discount is warranted. Usually, it isn't. Objection number three, and this one is my favorite. I just don't want to drive a car that 1,000 strangers have been in. It feels gross. Okay, I hear you. That is a real feeling. But I want you to notice what that feeling is doing to your bank account. That feeling, that psychological discomfort with the idea of strangers in your car, is costing you between $2,000 and $5,000 depending on the vehicle. You are paying for the feeling of ownership purity. And look, I'm not going to tell you that feelings don't matter. They do. Feelings matter a lot in personal finance decisions because you have to live with your choices. If you genuinely can't shake the discomfort, then a former rental isn't the right choice for you. But at least make that decision consciously. At least know that you are choosing comfort over math. That's a valid choice. What's not valid is convincing yourself that you're also making the smarter financial choice when you're actually paying a premium for a psychological preference. I want to spend a minute on this because it's actually the most important part of the whole conversation. We make most financial decisions based on narrative, not data. We create stories about the things we buy, and those stories generate emotions, and the emotions drive the actual decision. The data comes in after the fact to justify what we'd already decided. The rental car stigma is a story. It's a story with an emotional core. Strangers abused this car, and it bypasses your analytical brain before you've had a chance to check whether the story is actually true. Car dealerships and private sellers who own conventional used cars benefit from this story. Every time a potential buyer sees a rental history on a Carfax and walks away, that's one less competitor for the private owner inventory. The stigma is doing real market work, and it's doing it for free, funded entirely by inherited cultural assumptions. I'm asking you to run the story through an analytical filter before you let it make a $4,000 decision for you. Ask, is this actually a real risk? Is the risk priced correctly in the market? Am I paying for a real deficiency, or am I paying to avoid an uncomfortable feeling? In the case of former rental cars, more often than not, you're paying to avoid the feeling. All right, let's get practical, because I don't want to leave you with theory and no map. Option 1. Rental company direct sales. Enterprise Car Sales is the biggest player here, and they operate actual storefronts in most major markets. The advantage is that these cars are often coming straight from the fleet with full service records, a limited certification program in some cases, and clear documentation of what you're getting. The disadvantage, as I mentioned, is that they've gotten more sophisticated about pricing, so the discount isn't always as dramatic as it used to be. Still worth checking. Option 2. Dealer inventory with disclosed rental history. A lot of former rental cars end up at independent dealers who bought them at auction. These dealers are required to disclose the rental history, and many of them price the car slightly lower than comparable private owner inventory because they know some buyers will walk away. This is where you can sometimes find the clearest pricing arbitrage. The discount is sitting right there, explicit and negotiable. Option 3. Carfax and AutoCheck searches with disclosed fleet history. You can actually search for vehicles with disclosed fleet history on several major platforms. This is a deliberate targeting strategy. You're not stumbling into rental cars, you're hunting for them because you understand the market better than most buyers. Option 4. Private party sales, where the previous owner bought the car from a rental company and is now reselling it. This is interesting because the rental stigma sometimes stacks. The seller knows about it, priced it into what they paid, but buyers who don't know the history might actually be suspicious when they run the Carfax themselves, which means the discount might be baked in twice. Worth watching. In all of these cases, the pre-purchase inspection is non-negotiable. You run it on any used car, but especially here. You're not doing this because rental cars are inherently untrustworthy. You're doing it because it's just good financial hygiene on any used car purchase over $5,000. Now, I want to add one more layer here because not all rental cars are created equal, and the deal gets even better when you're selective about what you're looking for. Think about what cars rental companies actually buy. They're buying vehicles that are reliable, affordable to maintain, easy to source parts for, and appealing to the broadest possible customer base. They are not buying vehicles with quirky electrical systems or complicated European engineering or limited service networks. Rental fleets are dominated by Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Ford, Chevrolet, the most mainstream, most heavily supported vehicles in the market. These happen to also be some of the most reliable vehicles you can buy. When a Toyota Camry or a Honda Civic or a Hyundai Elantra comes out of a rental fleet, you're getting a car that was designed for exactly this kind of use. It was not designed to be coddled. It was not designed for a single enthusiast owner who takes it to car shows on weekends. It was designed to go 200,000 miles with regular maintenance and minimal drama. The rental car's past life is actually a stress test that it was engineered to pass. Compare that to buying a privately owned vehicle that was maybe more enthusiast-oriented, more complex, more powerful, more expensive to maintain, and was driven by someone who cared about it but maybe didn't always have the budget or knowledge to maintain it correctly. Which car is more likely to surprise you with a $2,000 repair bill 18 months after purchase? I'd argue it's not the Camry. There is an entire category of financial decisions that we make based on what I call inherited conventional wisdom, beliefs that made some sense in a different era, got passed down through culture and conversation, and now operate as invisible rules that we follow without ever questioning. The rental car stigma is one of these. The idea that you should always buy new because used cars are someone else's problem is another one. The belief that paying cash is always better than financing is another one. Sometimes it is, but not always. The idea that you should put the maximum down payment on a house because debt is inherently bad is another one. These are all stories. Some of them are true. Some of them were true once, but aren't anymore. Some of them were never true, but feel intuitively right because they rhyme with actual wisdom. The skill, and this is the actual financial skill that separates people who build wealth from people who struggle, the skill is learning to interrogate the story before you act on it. To ask, does this belief hold up? What are the numbers actually saying? Who benefits from me believing this? What am I giving up by following this rule? With rental cars, you're giving up $2,000 to $5,000 on a single transaction because of a story about strangers in a car. And then on the next car and the one after that, the story costs you again. Over a lifetime of car purchases, we're talking about potentially $15,000 to $25,000 in unnecessary spending just from this one inherited assumption. That's real money. That's a year of retirement savings. That's a down payment on something. That's options and flexibility. So let me give you the actual action items because I know some of you are in the market right now or will be in the next few months, and I want you to have a playbook. Step 1. Go to Carfax, AutoCheck, or whichever vehicle history service you prefer, and look at how vehicles with disclosed rental history are priced compared to comparable non-rental vehicles in your area. Just look. Build your own dataset on the discount that exists in your local market. See if it's $1,500 or $3,500 or more. Know what the arbitrage actually looks like before you start shopping. Step 2. Find an independent mechanic you trust before you need one. Not a dealership, a local shop with good reviews that does pre-purchase inspections. Call them. Tell them what you're planning, ask how much they charge and how much notice they need to do an inspection on a vehicle you bring them. Build that relationship now so it's not a logistical problem when you find a car you're interested in. Step 3. When you're shopping, don't filter out rental history automatically. Use it as a possible indicator of a deal, and then do your due diligence on the individual vehicle. No car is guaranteed. Every used car is a probability game. You're just trying to make sure the probabilities are in your favor and the price reflects the actual risk, not an inflated perception of risk. Step 4. Negotiate. If you're buying from a dealer who has a former rental and they're already pricing it at a slight discount, use the rental history as a negotiating point. Acknowledge it openly. Say, I see this has a rental history. I'm comfortable with that, but I'd expect to see that reflected in the price. In many cases, the dealer is relieved to have a buyer who isn't spooked by the history, and they'll deal. Step 5. Run the total cost of ownership math, not just the sticker price. What are the expected maintenance costs? What's the insurance going to be? What's the financing cost going to be over the full loan term? Compare that complete picture between the rental and the non-rental option, not just the price on the window sticker. Look, I want to end on something that I think is important. Most people who are struggling financially are not struggling because they made one massive, catastrophic financial decision. Most people are struggling because they made 1,000 small decisions that each seemed perfectly reasonable at the moment. Decisions that were guided by conventional wisdom, social pressure, marketing, and inherited assumptions. And those decisions added up over years and decades into a pattern that doesn't serve them. The rental car thing is one decision, a $3,000 decision maybe, but the habit of questioning inherited financial assumptions, that's worth infinitely more. That habit, applied consistently over 20, 30, 40 years of financial life, is what separates people who reach retirement with options from the people who reach retirement with regret. The next time someone in a slightly too wide tie slides a piece of paper across a desk and says, "Don't worry, this one's never been a rental," I want you to hear that as information. Information about a bias in the market that you can potentially exploit. Information about a story that's costing someone somewhere a few $1,000s, and it doesn't have to be you. Do the inspection, run the math, question the story. If this video helped you think about used cars or financial decision-making differently, please give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps the channel reach people who need this information. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of content, because we do this every week. And drop a comment below and let me know. Have you ever bought a former rental car? What was your experience? I want to hear both sides, because I believe in actual data and actual experiences over theory any day of the week. I'll see you in the next one.